The Book of Genesis in Pictures, Part 2, The Journey of the Chosen Ones. Featuring the Tower of Babel, Abraham's call, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Esau and Joseph the dreamer. Hello, amazing family of God. Welcome back to another exciting and heartwarming episode of Bible Stories in Pictures. Are you ready for more true stories from God's picture book, the Bible? In today's episode, we're going deeper into the amazing journeys of the first families God chose to use for His great plan. We will see brave decisions, beautiful love, fierce rivalry, and big dreams, all tied together with God's promises and faithfulness. So, find your seat, grab your Bible, and get ready, because today's adventure is all about trusting God, even when the path is long and the dream seems far away. Genesis continues with new characters and new callings. After the flood, the world grew again. And then God spoke, not just to the world, but to a man named Abraham. He promised stars, lands, and blessings that would touch the whole world. From Abraham came Isaac, who found love at a well. Then came Jacob, who tricked his way into blessings but faced his own trials. And finally, Joseph, a boy with dreams, a robe of many colors, and a heart that never gave up. These stories are packed with lessons for life about patience, courage, forgiveness, and God's unstoppable love. The title of the first story is the Tower of Babel, and it is found in Genesis, chapter 11, verses 1 to 9. In the early days after the Great Flood, the world was still fresh with hope. The sun rose on a new generation, and the earth slowly came alive with people again. Families spread, children played, animals roamed free, and the sky stretched far and wide over peaceful lands. But something was different. Everyone still spoke one language. One voice. One tongue. Whether they whispered or shouted, sang or prayed, every person on earth understood one another. There were no barriers, no borders, no misunderstandings. It felt powerful, almost magical. One day, a large group of travelers stopped in a vast plain called Shinar. The soil was rich. The weather was good. And there was space, so much space. They unpacked their belongings and looked around. The leaders gathered the people and pointed toward the sky. A strange idea was forming. Excitement crackled in the air like a coming storm. They wouldn't just live in Shinar. They would build something. Not a village. Not a house. Not a temple. A tower. A tower that would rise so high, it would kiss the heavens. Men, women, and children got to work. Mud was scooped, shaped, and burned until strong bricks were born. Tar bubbled thick and black from the ground, used to glue the bricks together like powerful hands. Hammers pounded, ropes tugged, carts rolled, all day and all night. And the tower rose. One level. Then another. Then another. Higher and higher, the structure twisted into the sky. People from faraway lands traveled to see the wonder. Their mouths dropped open in awe. The builders beamed with pride. Their tower shimmered in the sunlight like a stairway to glory. It wasn't just a tower. It was a monument to themselves. A way to never be forgotten. A way to never be scattered. But high above, in the silent heavens, something stirred. The higher the tower rose, the more the builders dreamed of becoming more than what they were meant to be. They stopped remembering who gave them life, who saved them from the flood, who held the stars in His hands. And something strange began to happen. One morning, a man passed another a heavy brick. But the second man stared blankly. He didn't move. He didn't understand. The first man repeated himself, louder this time. Still nothing. The second man frowned and spoke back, but in a completely different tongue. Eyes widened. Voices clashed. Panic spread. A woman called out to her sister, but her voice sounded like babble. Her sister answered in a language no one had ever heard before. Children cried. Tools clattered to the ground. Groups broke apart. Confusion swept through the city like a flood of noise and fear. No one could understand one another. Orders were shouted. Arguments exploded. A worker tried to give instructions, but no one followed. Mistrust crept in. Fights broke out. The once powerful unity shattered like a drop pot. And the tower stood frozen, unfinished, silent, lonely. The builders left one by one. Families packed their things. Groups walked away, heading north, south, east, and west. The plain of Shinar grew quiet. The Tower of Pride and Ambition was left behind like a forgotten dream. From that day on, the place was called Babel, because that's where all the languages of the world began, and where confusion swallowed the voice of pride. The tower never reached heaven. The people never reached their goal. And from the rubble, a truth remained. Only one voice can unite all voices. And only one name is worth building for. Our next story is Abraham's call, a promise under the stars. The story is found in Genesis, chapters 12 to 25. In a land filled with idols and carved statues, lived a man named Abram. He was not a king. He had no army. But his heart was open to something greater than gold or gods made by human hands. One quiet night, a voice stirred deep within him, a voice that felt alive, full of truth and power. The voice gave a strange command: leave your home. Leave your family. Go to a land I will show you. There was no map. No instructions. Just a promise: I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. Abram obeyed without arguing. He gathered his camels, sheep, and servants. His wife, Sarai, walked beside him. They said goodbye to everything familiar, the place where they grew up, their relatives, even their favorite resting tree. Day after day, they journeyed. Through deserts. Past cities. Across rivers. At night, they looked up at the stars and remembered the voice. Years passed. Grey streaks appeared in Abram's beard. Sarai's face grew wrinkled. Still, they had no child. Yet Abram built altars to God in every place they camped. He never forgot the promise. One day, God appeared again. This time, God changed his name from Abram to Abraham, which means father of many. Sarai became Sarah, princess. It sounded silly. They were so old. Yet something stirred in their hearts. Hope returned. Then came the surprise. One morning, Sarah laughed. One hot afternoon, Abraham sat by his tent when he looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. He quickly welcomed them, offered water, and asked Sarah to help prepare a meal. As the visitors ate under the trees, one of them said, "This time next year, Sarah will have a son." Inside the tent, Sarah overheard it and laughed quietly. She was old, and so was Abraham. A baby? Now? But the visitor asked, why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord? Sarah denied it, but the promise had been spoken. And soon, the impossible would come true. Then came the surprise. She had felt a flutter in her belly. She was pregnant. Months later, a baby boy cried out in their tent. They named him Isaac, which means laughter. Abraham's eyes overflowed with tears as he held the baby in his arms. He looked up at the same stars God had shown him years before. One promise. One journey. One baby. God had kept his word. Our third Bible story in the book of Genesis in pictures, part 2, is about Isaac and Rebekah. The story is found in Genesis, chapter 24. Many years had passed since Abraham followed God's call and received the promise of a great nation. Now Abraham was very old, and his son Isaac was no longer a little boy. Isaac had grown into a gentle, thoughtful man who loved God with all his heart. Abraham knew it was time for Isaac to marry, but not just any woman. Abraham didn't want Isaac to marry someone from the land of Canaan, where people worshipped idols. He wanted a wife who would also follow the one true God. So he called his trusted servant and gave him a very important task. The servant was to travel far away, all the way back to Abraham's homeland to find a wife for Isaac. It was a long journey through dry deserts and rocky paths. The servant packed gifts, supplies, and 10 strong camels. But most of all, he carried a prayer in his heart. When he reached the city of Nair, the servant stopped by a well just outside the city. The sun was setting. It was the perfect time, the time when women came out to draw water for their families. The servant bowed his head and whispered a prayer. He asked God for a special sign. He said, "Let the right girl be the one who not only gives me water but also offers water to my thirsty camels." Just as he finished praying, a young woman came walking toward the well. Her name was Rebekah. She was graceful, kind, and full of joy. She carried a large jar on her shoulder. When the servant asked her for a drink, Rebekah quickly lowered her jar and gave him water. Then, without being asked, she offered to draw water for all 10 of his camels. That was a lot of work. But she didn't hesitate. She worked hard and smiled as she helped. The servant watched in awe. Every detail matched the prayer he had just prayed. God had answered, right before his eyes. He gave Rebekah a gold nose ring and bracelets, then asked about her family. When he learned she was the granddaughter of Abraham's brother, his heart leaped with joy. He bowed down and praised God for guiding him so clearly. Rebekah ran home to tell her family. Her brother, Laban, came out to meet the servant and welcomed him into their home. After hearing the whole story, Rebekah's family agreed this was God's plan. Rebekah was willing and ready to go with the servant to become Isaac's wife. The very next morning, she set out on the long journey. As they traveled back, the sun rose and set, and her heart wondered what Isaac would be like. One evening, as they drew near, Isaac was walking in a field, quietly meditating and talking with God. He looked up and saw the camels approaching. Rebekah saw him too. She quickly covered herself with a veil, as was the custom for brides. When they met, there were no grand speeches or big shows. Just peace, gentle smiles, and quiet joy. Isaac took Rebekah as his wife, and he loved her deeply. His heart, which had mourned the loss of his mother Sarah, was comforted again. Their love was not rushed or forced, it was shaped by faith, guided by prayer, and blessed by God. A true love story that began with a journey, a prayer, and a woman at a well. The fourth Bible story is about Jacob and Esau, and it is found in Genesis, chapters 25 to 33. Isaac and Rebekah had twin sons, Esau and Jacob. Even before they were born, they struggled inside Rebekah's womb. When they were finally born, Esau came out first, red and covered with hair, and right behind him was Jacob, holding onto his brother's heel. This moment showed that their lives would always be connected and complicated. As the boys grew up, their differences became clear. Esau loved the outdoors, hunting, and wild places. Jacob preferred staying near the tents, thinking, planning, and helping with cooking. Isaac favored Esau, while Rebekah loved Jacob more. One day, Esau came home from hunting, exhausted and starving. Jacob had just made a pot of delicious red stew. Esau begged for some, but Jacob saw an opportunity. He told Esau to sell his birthright, his rights as the firstborn son, in exchange for the food. Esau didn't care in the moment. He was hungry and thought he might die. So, he agreed. Jacob handed him the stew. Esau ate and walked away, not realizing how much he had just lost. Years later, when Isaac was old and nearly blind, he called Esau to prepare him a special meal so he could give him his final blessing. But Rebekah overheard. She wanted Jacob to receive that blessing instead. She quickly helped Jacob disguise himself with goat hair on his arms and Esau's clothes. Jacob brought food to Isaac and pretended to be Esau. Isaac, though confused, was convinced. He blessed Jacob, giving him the future and favor meant for Esau. Soon after, Esau returned. When he found out what had happened, he cried out in anger and pain. Isaac could not take back the blessing. Esau vowed to kill Jacob. To protect him, Rebekah sent Jacob away to her brother Laban's home in another land. On the journey, Jacob had a dream of a ladder reaching up to heaven, with angels going up and down. God promised to be with him and bring him back safely. Jacob woke up in awe and made a promise to serve God. At Laban's house, Jacob worked hard for many years. He was tricked into marrying Leah when he loved Rachel. Still, he built a large family and became wealthy. But his heart longed for home. Finally, God told Jacob to return. He packed everything, his wives, children, animals, and servants, and began the journey. But he was afraid. Esau was coming to meet him with 400 men. Jacob was terrified. He prayed and even sent gifts ahead to soften Esau's heart. That night, he wrestled with a strange man until morning. It was an angel of God. Jacob refused to let go until he received a blessing. The angel gave him a new name, Israel, one who wrestles with God. The next day, Jacob saw Esau approaching. He bowed low again and again. But to his surprise, Esau ran to him, not with anger, but with open arms. He hugged Jacob and wept. What began with deception ended with forgiveness. Two brothers who were once torn apart were finally reunited. Our fifth and the last story for this episode is about Joseph, the dreamer. The Bible story is found in Genesis, chapters 37 to 50. Long ago, in the land of Canaan, there lived a man named Jacob who had 12 sons. But among them all, Jacob dearly loved one the most, Joseph, the son of his old age, born to Rachel. To show his love, Jacob gave Joseph a special gift, a long robe made with many bright colors. The beautiful coat flowed like a rainbow on Joseph's shoulders, and it made him stand out wherever he went. But Joseph wasn't just loved and favored, he was a dreamer. One night, Joseph had a strange dream. In it, bundles of wheat stood tall in a field. His bundle stayed upright, while his brother's bundles bowed down to his. Another night, he dreamed of the sun, the moon, and 11 stars all bowing before him. He couldn't keep these dreams to himself, he shared them. His brothers' hearts burned with envy. Does he think we'll all bow to him one day? They were angry, not just because of the dreams, but because their father seemed to love Joseph more than all of them. Their jealousy turned into a secret plan. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers who were tending sheep far away. Joseph walked through valleys and hills, wearing his colorful coat, looking for them. When his brothers saw him coming from a distance, their hatred boiled over. "Here comes the dreamer," they said. They grabbed him, ripped off his precious coat, and threw him into a dry, empty pit. At first, they thought of killing him. But then, a caravan of traders passed by on camels, heading to Egypt. For 20 pieces of silver, they sold Joseph. He was tied, loaded onto a camel, and carried away, helpless and heartbroken. Joseph's cries faded into the desert wind. To cover up their deed, the brothers dipped Joseph's coat in goat's blood and took it home to Jacob. The sight of the stained coat broke Jacob's heart. He tore his clothes, wept bitterly, and refused to be comforted. "My son is gone," he cried. But Joseph wasn't gone. He was alive in a strange land, Egypt. There, he was sold as a slave to a powerful man named Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard. Joseph worked hard, and God was with him. Everything Joseph touched began to succeed. Potiphar noticed and made Joseph in charge of his household. But trouble came again. Potiphar's wife told lies about Joseph, and though he was innocent, Joseph was thrown into a dark, lonely prison. Even in that cold place, God was with Joseph. He gave him favor with the prison keeper, and Joseph was soon put in charge of the other prisoners. Joseph didn't understand everything, but he kept trusting God. This was only the beginning. From a pit in the ground to a prison cell in Egypt, Joseph's journey seemed unfair and full of pain. But God had a purpose. And nothing, not betrayal, not chains, not tears, could stop his plan. Joseph sat in prison, forgotten by many, but not by God. Pharaoh had 2 strange dreams that no one could explain. Someone remembered Joseph, the dream interpreter. Joseph was brought from prison and explained that dreams, 7 good years would be followed by 7 years of famine. Pharaoh was amazed and placed Joseph in charge of all Egypt. Joseph stored food during the good years. When the famine came, people from many lands came to Egypt, including Joseph's brothers. They didn't recognize him, but he knew them. Instead of punishing them, Joseph forgave them. He wept, hugged them, and said, "What you meant for harm, God meant for good." He brought his father Jacob and the whole family to live in Egypt. God's dream for Joseph had come true. What was meant for evil, God turned it for good for Joseph. He can do so for you too if you trust and depend on God wholeheartedly.
10 solid lessons to learn from the Bible stories in Genesis in Pictures, Part 2, tagged The Journey of the Chosen Ones, featuring stories from the Tower of Babel, Abraham's Call, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Esau, and Joseph the Dreamer. 1. Faith walks into the unknown. Abraham left the comfort of Ur without knowing his final destination. His obedience shaped history. Faith doesn't always have clear signs. It just moves forward, trusting God. 2. God answers quiet prayers. Rebekah's appearance at the well was not coincidence. It was the answer to a servant's whispered prayer. Sometimes what seems like a small act of kindness opens the door to destiny. 3. Deceit brings pain, but God can redeem it. Jacob tricked his father and stole Esau's blessing. The result? Years of fear, distance, and sorrow. But later, forgiveness triumphed. Even when we make terrible choices, God can still write a beautiful ending. 4. True love is worth waiting for. Isaac waited. Rebekah left home in faith. They didn't chase after love. They trusted God to bring it. Love built on trust and prayer stands the test of time. 5. Dreams from God may be delayed, not denied. Joseph's dreams didn't happen overnight. He was hated, sold, imprisoned. But every step was preparing him for the palace. Hold on, delay doesn't mean denial. 6. Forgiveness can heal what time cannot. Esau had every reason to remain angry, but when he saw Jacob, years of hurt melted away. Sometimes the most powerful moment is choosing mercy over revenge. 7. God's hand is present even in pain. Joseph didn't see God's plan in the pit or prison, but through betrayal, lies, and silence, God was leading him to save nations. Trust his process even in dark seasons. 8. God's plans always prevail over man's pride. In the story of the Tower of Babel in Genesis, chapter 11, people united to build a tower to heaven, not to worship, but to make a name for themselves. God scattered them. Pride divides, but humility invites God's guidance. 9. Obedience builds legacy. Abraham's yes to God became the foundation of a nation. Our decisions today can affect generations to come. A single act of obedience can unlock a lifelong purpose. 10. God uses the least expected. Joseph was the youngest, Jacob was a deceiver, Rebekah was a kind stranger, and Abraham was a foreigner in a strange land. Yet, each was chosen. God doesn't look for perfect people. He looks for willing hearts. What a breathtaking journey we've seen. From stars and tents to wells and prisons, from laughter to betrayal to forgiveness. These aren't just ancient stories. They mirror our lives today. They remind us that no pain is wasted, no path is too twisted, and no promise is ever forgotten. The God who guided Abraham, comforted Rebekah, wrestled with Jacob, lifted Joseph, and scattered prideful builders, is the same God who walks with you today. Did you enjoy this powerful journey? Then don't stop here. Subscribe now to Bible Stories in Pictures, where truth comes alive in color and story. Like this episode, comment below with your favorite lesson and share it with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to click the bell so you'll be the first to know when the next episode drops.
What to expect in Part 3 is the book of Exodus in pictures. As we bring the book of Genesis to a close, we end with Joseph's powerful message of forgiveness and hope. Though he died in Egypt, he believed that one day, God would bring his people back to the land he promised. In part 3, we will step into the book of Exodus, where a new chapter unfolds, one filled with miracles, deliverance, and destiny. Get ready for a new king in Egypt who forgot Joseph and turned the Israelites into slaves. The birth of a baby boy named Moses, hidden in a basket and rescued by a princess. A burning bush and a call from God that changes everything. 10 powerful plagues that shake Egypt to its core. The unforgettable night of Passover. And the thrilling Red Sea escape where God makes a way where there is none. Exodus is a story of courage, trust, and the God who hears our cries and comes down to rescue us. Don't miss it. So, stay tuned for part 3, the book of Exodus in pictures. It's going to be epic, emotional, and full of God's power. Make sure to like, leave a comment, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next powerful adventure in God's storybook. Till we come your way again, remain blessed. See you in the next video. Bye.